Mother-in-law disowned husband aka her son for marrying someone as ugly as me and moved his ex-wife into the house. 2 years later we receive a letter from her delivering this terrible news and we're all shocked because we never knew karma could strike back so hard. 2 years ago, my mother-in-law, 52 female, disowned my husband, 29 male, because of his marriage to me, 26 female. And a few days ago, she passed away from cancer. We have been together for 4 years, married for 2, and my mother-in-law Pamela had never approved of me. Right from the first time that we had met, she had been very cold and acted very rudely. I had never been treated like that before by anyone and my husband was very apologetic about her behavior, but even after a lot of confrontations and discussions with her, he was not able to find out the real reason why she didn't like me. She just kept insisting that I was not a good fit for the family and it was very frustrating for my husband and very hurtful for me. He couldn't cut her out of his life completely because his father had passed away when he was very little and she had raised him completely on her own, so of course he was very grateful to her. But even then, after he started dating, he kind of distanced himself from her when she made it clear that she was not going to be accepting me anytime soon. After 2 years of dating, we decided to elope and get married as a spur-of-the-moment decision on our 2nd anniversary together. When we came back and told our family so we could have a proper wedding, my family was very happy but Pamela lost her mind. She told him that she never wanted to see him again and said that she had had enough of this and finally we got to the bottom of why she didn't like me. Basically, she believed that her son deserved better and shouldn't have married somebody as ugly as me. And she was embarrassed of having me for a daughter-in-law because it wasn't like I was a sight to behold appearance-wise and neither was I particularly accomplished to make up for it. For context, I had been diagnosed with Bcuz and Cushing's syndrome 6 years ago, which means that I've had to make a lot of lifestyle changes, but even then, I struggle with my weight occasionally. And on top of that, I have a really weird-looking buffalo hump on the back of my neck, courtesy of my Cushing's syndrome, but I don't let these things bother me. I know that as long as I'm trying to stay healthy, it will all work out fine. Unfortunately, according to Pamela, I am hideously deformed and that's why she never liked me. Obviously, my husband had a huge fight with her about that because she said these horrible things right to my face and made me cry the day that we told her about the fact that we had eloped. But she didn't care. She just told him that she didn't want to see either of us ever again and told him that she was disowning him for as long as he stayed married to me. After that, my husband walked out with me and hasn't looked back. She wasn't invited to the wedding either, and for the past 2 years, we have barely had any contact with her, because not only did she call me ugly and disown me, but a couple of months after we got married, she ended up moving his ex-wife into the house with her. My husband's college girlfriend got married right after they graduated after being together for 2 years, but that marriage ended in divorce because she wanted to stop looking for jobs and stay at home at the time. My husband couldn't afford to let her do that and if they wanted to afford the lifestyle that she wanted, she would have had to work too. That gave way to a lot of differences between the two of them and they ended up filing for divorce just a couple of weeks after their 1st anniversary. Since then, they hadn't kept in touch, but Pamela had remained close to his ex, Daisy. He didn't even know that they had stayed in touch until Pamela sent him an email 5 months after we got married saying that now that the two of us were officially together in everybody's eyes, she wanted nothing to do with him anymore and she had been deeply upset by the fact that even though she didn't approve of me, he had still gone and married me. But it was fine because she had spoken to Daisy and now she had decided to move in with Pamela to keep her company. From the email, we made out that Daisy had offered to move in with her after hearing what had gone down with us. She had told Pamela that she was going to her and staying with her to keep her company and was making it out to be some huge sacrifice that she was making for the sake of her ex-mother-in-law. But my husband and I both knew that she was doing this and that's because she didn't like working and she knew that as long as she was staying with Pamela she would be taken care of. Since in spite of being a single mother, she had done pretty well in her career and was still working, Daisy didn't have anything to worry about financially. To put it in a few words, Pamela was getting played for a fall, but she thought that Daisy was coming to her rescue and was going to be the daughter that she never had and these are actually her words. In her email, she literally said that Daisy was the daughter she never had and confessed that she had never even wanted a son and had wanted a daughter just like herself. So she was actually much happier with Daisy in her life and that upset my husband a lot. But he still never replied to that email. I was always aware of the fact that Pamela really liked Daisy and thought of her as a younger version of herself simply because they were both blonde and were interested in modeling when they were in college. That's pretty much where the similarities end, but Pamela had projected herself onto her and had always liked her a lot. She often even brought her up to compare to me to make me feel bad about myself, but nobody had ever thought that she would actually choose Daisy over her own son. But that's what happened and after that email they never spoke again. Now fast forward to 3 months ago, my husband started receiving phone calls and messages from an unknown number. He didn't accept the calls, but he did read the messages saying that his mother was really sick and had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer a couple of months ago and she wanted to see him. But my husband thought that somebody was playing a prank on him, so he ignored it at first and blocked the number, and then finally one day he started receiving calls from another number. So he finally picked up and it was Daisy on the other line. She tried to talk to him, but he told her that he was not interested and hung up. After that, she didn't try to contact him again, and my husband never even told me about this until recently. The reason this was brought up was because a couple of days ago we received an email from Daisy saying that his mother had passed away in her sleep after a particularly bad and painful day in the hospital. In the past few months after my husband had rejected his mother's last wishes to see him, she had grown increasingly upset and angry and wrote him out of her will officially, something she hadn't done until recently, although she had declared that she was disowning him publicly. And she has specifically asked Daisy not to inform him when things got worse because she didn't want him to get the opportunity to see her again while she was alive. But now that she was gone, Daisy thought that it was finally appropriate to let him know according to his mom's last wishes. The funeral is in 9 days from now, and of course my husband ended up crying when he realized that his mom had passed away without even seeing him one last time. And I did comfort him because in spite of their differences, this is the same woman who had raised him all on her own. So of course, it's going to be hard on him. But in the past few years, I've also learned that she's not exactly perfect, and even apart from the whole thing with me and Daisy, there were a lot of other things that were very problematic about her, but I don't want to get into that right now. Anyway, my point is that I comforted my husband, but when he said that as part of everything that had happened, he just didn't think that he wanted to attend the funeral, and I told him that it was not necessary for him to do so if he didn't feel like it because a lot of time had passed, and rather than be fake and pretentious, I think it would be better to just sit it out. My parents don't agree though, and they think that I'm being selfish and unreasonable and that I should be convincing him to attend his mom's funeral if I actually cared about him. The thing is, I do care about him, and that's why I don't think that I should pressure him into doing something that he doesn't want to, and he has made it clear that he doesn't want to go. But at the end of the day, it is his mom and it is her funeral, so it's a pretty big deal if he doesn't go. And I'm afraid that I might be making a mistake here by encouraging him. Ida for telling my husband that it's fine if he doesn't attend his mom's funeral? Edit? Okay. So the other stuff that I was talking about, I didn't bring it up in the post because it was not exactly relevant to the whole situation with me or the situation with Daisy. It's just stuff from the past, but I guess it'll still help come to a conclusion. So the thing is, even though Pamela raised him completely by herself, with a little help from his grandparents, she was also not exactly the best kind of parent to have. I can understand that as a single mother, things must have been tough for her, and maybe she thought that it was necessary for her to be a disciplinarian so she would be taken seriously at home. But somehow, instead of scaring him in a disciplinarian kind of way, she was just generally scary. From whatever my husband has told me, she had serious anger issues, and she would lash out at him over the smallest of things, sometimes even getting physical, and this continued till he was in high school. And then hours later, she would pretend like nothing had even happened, as she couldn't even remember that she had said or done anything. On top of that, while trying to make sure that he was disciplined and academically focused, she pretty much ended up making sure that he didn't do anything at all. He was not allowed to go over to his friends' places after school or invite them over. He was not allowed to go to parties or even to date. Of course, he still did all this secretly, but it was just really difficult for him because while other kids were allowed to do all this by their parents, his mother simply wouldn't have it, and that's why he had to put in so much effort just to hide normal stuff. I'm not an authority figure when it comes to parenting, but because I don't have any kids of my own, but I'm pretty sure that she really messed him up and her behavior as a parent was less than ideal. Even after he grew up, she continued wanting to control him, so I can understand why he ended up distancing himself from her so much when he finally got the opportunity to do so. He had only stayed in touch with her out of respect for everything that she had done for him as a mother, but then after she insulted him, I guess he finally realized that in spite of everything, she was never going to be able to respect him as an individual, and that's why he cut her off. That's why he doesn't want to attend the funeral, because her entire family is going to be there. And he just doesn't want a bunch of crap from people who hardly even know him telling him how disappointed his mother had been without knowing the full facts, especially when he's struggling internally as well. And I feel like he has his reason, so it's not necessary for him to be present there. Update 1. Thank you, everyone, for all the comments. I've spoken to my parents, and I've told them that at the end of the day, it's my husband's decision whether he wants to be there at Pamela's funeral or not, and I'm not going to force him to do anything he doesn't feel comfortable doing, especially considering the fact that he has lost his mother and he's already feeling pretty weird and conflicted about everything he's going through. The last thing he needs is me pressuring him to do something he doesn't want to. He just needs to be comforted and taken care of at the moment. He and his mother had a complex relationship, and I didn't tell my parents everything because honestly, it's none of their business. But I told them that it's not like he doesn't feel bad. It's just that he has his personal reasons and they need to respect it. But they told me that I was being unreasonable and it was a huge sign of disrespect to not be present at his mom's funeral. And then for some reason, they started taking it personally, saying that kids nowadays are really ungrateful and can't think about anybody apart from themselves. They always want to take the easy way out, and apparently, our generation is really egoistic and selfish, blah blah blah. The same crap that other people say, and I don't have any patience for that. So I told them that they don't know anything about his situation or his reasons, and not everybody has a healthy relationship with their parents, so they need to cut it out. I was furious that they were even arguing with me about this because I know my husband a lot better than they do, and it was really annoying that they were pretending that this was a generation-specific problem when it was really just a very specific personal issue. Anyway, long story short, I got into a fight with my parents over this, and for the past couple of days, we haven't been speaking to each other. I really don't understand why they are so stubborn about this, because at the end of the day, this is between my husband and his mother. They don't have anything to do with it. In fact, they didn't even know Pamela that well. They had probably met her just a handful of times, and even then, they hadn't gotten along well with her because they had seen the way she treated me. I don't understand why they are taking it so personally, as if my husband and I have refused to attend an event that they're hosting or something. I haven't told my husband about the fight with my parents because honestly, he has enough on his plate right now and he doesn't need to know about my troubles as well. Ever since he read the email, he's become a lot more quiet and withdrawn, and I can totally understand that he's going through something. So if I tell him about whatever my parents are saying right now, I'm sure that it's going to make him feel even worse. For a while, I was feeling anxious that my parents might end up contacting him directly, so I decided to mute all notifications from them on his phone for his own good. He doesn't know about it. I'm gonna tell him later, but I just don't want my parents to be bothering him at this time. It was probably the single most sneaky thing that I've ever done, even though we know each other's passwords. We have never snooped or gone through each other's phones, so this is the first time that I've ever done that, and I'm not sure how he might react to that when I tell him, but the only thing that I'm sure of is that I'm doing this for his own good, and I'm hoping that that's enough. Apart from that, I've also been feeling very weird about the whole situation, because even though I never liked Pamela because of the way she treated me, it's still very strange to think that she's gone and we'll never see her again. It makes me feel very uneasy every time I think about it. So I've been trying to keep myself distracted overall, and this is just a very difficult and weird time for our family. I'm just hoping that the time passes soon and this blows over quickly, because I can't bear to keep feeling this continuously all the time any longer now. It's really suffocating. Anyway, that's it from me for now. Thank you. Update 2. It has been 5 days since my last update, and for the past couple of days, my parents and I have had absolutely no contact since the fight that we had over the phone. I also kept checking my husband's phone periodically to delete any messages that my parents might have sent him, but luckily they hadn't tried to call or text him. I was just beginning to ease up about the whole thing, but then yesterday in the afternoon I received a call from my husband at work, and he told me that he had received an email from a new address, but after reading it he had realized that it was from my parents. I instantly knew that it was not going to be good news, and it wasn't. He went on to tell me that his parents had written 2 whole paragraphs criticizing him for his decision and also saying how selfish and unreasonable it is for me to be supporting him. They have called him an escapist and a coward for refusing to attend his mother's funeral just because he's afraid of what people from her family might say, which they have every right to say because he cut his mother out of his life and refused to see her even when she was sick. Instead of facing all the criticism and accepting it, he's running away from it at the cost of seeing his mother one last time and paying his last respects. And apparently, according to my parents, it's despicable. My decision to support him in this is also no less despicable. And finally, they said that maybe Pamela did the right thing by disowning us because clearly we don't really care about our parents. The email was really mean and completely unnecessary because this is not their place to be saying anything. They don't know the whole truth and they don't need to be lecturing him about what's right and what's wrong. My parents always have had a tendency to speak out of tone, believing that they know the best, but they've mostly always kept it restricted to me and maybe a few other people from the family. They have never tried to speak where it's not their place outside of our family, especially with my husband. This is the first time, but this is enough. I was very upset that they had gone out of their way to create a new email address, one that they knew hadn't been blocked or muted by me, and sent him that email. The fact that they had created a new one just goes to show that this was a very well thought out act that they had done, knowing that it would bother me a lot. They knew I had probably blocked their numbers and other ways to contact us, so they had gone out of their way to do this, and I just don't understand why they're so convinced that they're right. They don't even know the whole situation. I was obviously furious when my husband told me about it, and I had every intention of calling my parents up then and there and giving them a piece of my mind, but my husband told me to just let it go. It's not like he didn't care or wasn't upset about it. He was, but he was just so resigned to the situation that he didn't even think that it was necessary to say anything. The funeral is just 2 days away now, and he has already made up his mind that he is not going to be attending. It's not going to be easy for him either, but he has already decided something for himself, and he doesn't think that he needs to defend his decision to anybody who doesn't know anything about his life, how he grew up and his relationship with his mother. Even if it's my parents, he doesn't think he needs to dignify it with a response, and the best thing that we can do right now is just completely ignore them. After that, I told him about how they had been getting on my nerves in the beginning. How we had a huge fight about this and how I went through his phone and muted them so he wouldn't have to suffer the same thing, and he just laughed and told me that he was really grateful to have a wife who goes through his phone, not out of suspicion, but out of concern for him. He also told me that he was really happy that I had chosen to defend him to my parents and even get into a fight with them to the extent where I was ready not to talk to them all for his sake. But he also told me that since he had lost both parents, he wouldn't mind if I continued to talk to them. But after this there was no chance I was going to speak to them unless they apologized to him for saying whatever they did. These were really terrible things that they said to him, without knowing anything about his life properly, and they have no right to judge him without knowing things. In fact, let me just rephrase that, they have no right to judge him, period. That email was not only disrespectful to him, it was also disrespectful to me because I feel like since I'm their daughter they should have just trusted my judgment. Of course I'm not some evil goblin bent on making sure that he doesn't attend his mom's funeral. Of course if I'm supporting him there must be some reason, but they can't bring themselves to believe that. They just want to prove that they are right, and so they will do anything it takes to make us feel bad about it. So be it then. I don't want to talk to them anymore, and I'm definitely not going to interact with them any further until and unless they apologize to my husband for whatever they said in that email, because they have crossed the line. That should not have been crossed, and I'm not going to allow them to get away with that. Update 3. Hi. So it's been 2 days since my last update, and today the funeral was held. Right from the morning, my husband was acting very strangely and was very quiet, and I knew exactly why. Thankfully, it's a Saturday, so we didn't have work today and we stayed at home. To keep his mind off of things, I decided to watch a movie with him instead of finishing up our work in the mornings to get ahead of the next week like we usually do. He was kind of fidgety and distracted the entire time, but at least he sat through the entire movie with me before he checked his email, and sure enough around 4 in the evening, he saw that he had received an email from Daisy saying that she was very disappointed that he hadn't even bothered to show up for his mom's funeral and that she had had to do everything. She told him that a lot of people had been asking about him and everyone had been very disappointed and shocked that he didn't even bother to attend. My husband ended up crying for quite a while, and I sat there and consoled him. In the end he asked me if he had done the right thing or not, but I just told him that now it had already been done and it was not necessary for him to constantly keep thinking about it. He did what he believed was right, and if he wants to he can go pray about it in church this Sunday to make him feel better, but other than that there's no point in constantly beating himself up about it. I also told him not to feel bad about the fact that Daisy was the one who had organized everything, especially given the fact that she was the one who had been staying with Pamela for the past 2 years. She's the one set to inherit everything that Pamela has left, so I think it's fair enough that she's the one who had to organize everything, because clearly Pamela always liked her better. As she herself had mentioned in the email that she had sent us 2 years ago, after he and I had that discussion, he started to seem slightly better and we went out for dinner to a nearby restaurant to keep his mind off of things. I'm typing this out in bed right now and he's asleep beside me, and I'm not sure if I was able to help him out or not, but at least I tried my best, and that's all that I can say. Update 4. Hi. So it's been a couple of weeks since my last update. My husband has started therapy and he's doing better now, at least emotionally. I haven't been on speaking terms with my parents for a really long time, and I don't intend on speaking to them unless they apologize, which I don't think they're going to do, but it's fine. My husband and I are used to distancing ourselves from our parents. It's kind of disappointing, but there's nothing much that I can do about it. Anyway, I'm just happy that my husband and I are doing well, and even though I still find him occasionally going through old photos of him with his mom, I know that he has accepted the fact that she's gone, the good and the bad. If he regrets his decision not to attend a funeral, he never lets me know about it, and I try not to ask about it too much either, because I know that it probably hurts him to talk about it. If he wants to, I'm always here for him, but I'm gonna let him decide when he wants to talk about it right now. As for Daisy, even though we had blocked her, she sent us another email a couple of days ago saying that Pamela had left everything to her and she hoped that he wouldn't contest the will because she really needs this right now. That was it. She didn't say anything else, and I don't think that my husband is going to be contesting the will either. That's probably the last thing on his mind right now. And in all honesty, I don't mind the fact that Daisy's going to have everything that Pamela left. She can keep it. I don't think either of us is going to be particularly affected by any of that. Anyway, we are working on things slowly but steadily, and I hope that someday my husband is going to be fine with everything that worked out in his favor and everything that didn't, and I'm going to be by his side always.